She kissed him goodbye, then whispered something in his ear. Less than 30 seconds later, he snapped, in front of guards, families, children. He stabbed her in the neck with a sharpened plastic fork, again, and again, and again. Her blood soaked the prison floor, and no one knew why. Until investigators discovered a secret so personal, so devastating, it made headlines across the country, then mysteriously vanished. This is the story of James Dalton and the murder that changed prison visitations forever. James Dalton, better known on the streets of Dayton, Ohio as J.D., wasn't born a killer. He was raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. J.D. was smart, quick-witted. Teachers said he had potential, but by 17, that potential turned into survival. He got caught up in armed robberies, mostly small convenience stores, always wearing a mask, never hurting anyone. But by his 3rd strike, the courts weren't playing games. At 22 years old, he was sentenced to 24 years at Marion Correctional Institution. Inside, J.D. kept his head down. He read, wrote poetry, traded commissary for notebooks. To the guards, he was just another quiet inmate trying to do his time. But everything changed in 2017, when he signed up for a prison pen pal program online. That's when she reached out. She called herself Tasha Reynolds. Soft voice, Christian, said she was looking for someone genuine to build with. They started writing weekly, then phone calls, then pictures. She wasn't just beautiful, she listened. She remembered his stories. She sent him Bible verses. She told him she believed in second chances. By the end of the year, J.D. was hooked. Inmates said you could always tell when he got a letter. He'd read it at least 5 times before tucking it under his pillow like it was gold. When she visited for the first time, it was like something out of a movie. He wore his best khakis. She wore red lipstick. They sat at the same table every time after that. By April 2018, they were married. The whole visiting room clapped. J.D. even cried. But behind those tears, something darker was growing. And no one saw it coming. At first, J.D.'s letters were filled with poems and Bible verses. But by August 2018, just 4 months after the wedding, his tone began to shift. He stopped smiling as much in the yard. He skipped meals. One of his cellmates, a man named Dre, would later testify. He'd sit up at night rereading her letters, not like in love, like he was trying to find something. It wasn't just paranoia. J.D. said there were inconsistencies in her stories. One week she claimed she had no siblings. The next, she talked about an older brother who raised her. She told him she grew up in a small town in Kentucky, but couldn't name the high school when he asked. And then came the phone call. September 2nd, 10:47 p.m. Tasha called J.D. from a prepaid number. The prison monitors every call, but this one raised no red flags. Still, according to prison logs, J.D. didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he filed a formal request to speak with the prison chaplain. He didn't say why, but when the chaplain saw him, J.D. only said, "She's hiding something from me. I can feel it, and it's big." By the 2nd week of September, J.D. stopped writing back. Tasha sent 3 letters. No reply. She left 2 voicemails. Silence. Then, on September 14th, she made a surprise visit. Unscheduled, unannounced. She told the front desk she just wanted to clear the air. But what she walked into wasn't just a man with questions, it was a man on the edge of something irreversible. September 14th, 2018, 2:12 p.m. The visiting room at Marion Correctional Institution was buzzing like usual. Families reuniting, kids running between tables, guards sipping coffee near the vending machines. Tasha Reynolds signed in with security like every other visit. Except this time, J.D. wasn't expecting her. When he walked into the room and saw her sitting there, fresh lipstick, soft curls tucked behind her ears, he hesitated. Then he smiled. The kind of smile that looks good on the outside, but doesn't reach the eyes. They sat at their usual table, tucked in the back near the broken vending machine. Cameras were rolling. Microphones were mounted, as always. For the first 15 minutes, everything looked normal. She held his hand. He nodded quietly. They even shared a honey bun and orange soda, his favorite combo. But the tension was thick. JD wasn't laughing, and every few minutes he kept glancing at the corrections officer posted by the exit. At 2:34 p.m., something changed. Tasha leaned forward, put her hand on his cheek, and whispered something. Just one sentence, too soft to catch on tape. JD blinked, his jaw clenched, and then he stood up. With one motion, he reached into his waistband, where he had hidden a sharpened plastic spork melted and carved over weeks. He lunged. Tasha didn't even scream. The first strike hit her neck. The second pierced her jawline. By the third, she collapsed onto the concrete floor. Families ran, guards shouted. One officer tackled JD to the ground. Another screamed for medical. But it was too late. Tasha was gone. She bled out in less than 90 seconds. After the attack, James Dalton was dragged from the visiting room covered in blood, her blood. 4 guards restrained him as he screamed, but it wasn't rage. It was confusion. Why didn't she tell me? Why? He repeated it over and over, like he was trying to convince himself. They moved him to Interrogation Room 12, a windowless space in the admin wing. A camera recorded everything, time-stamped, documented. At 3:07 p.m., 2 homicide detectives entered. Sergeant Melissa Green and Lieutenant Don Reyes, veterans, stone-faced, calm. JD was handcuffed to a steel chair, still breathing hard, eyes wide, no tears. First question. James, why did you attack your wife? JD's answer, silence. Second question. Did she say something to you? Still nothing. He just stared at the floor, then slowly raised his head and whispered, I needed to know the truth. The officers tried again, over and over, but JD shut down. He stared at the wall like he wasn't even there. So they changed tactics. They brought in Tasha's purse, recovered from the visitation room. Inside was a phone, some tissues, and an envelope. An envelope marked, for JD, in case I can't say it. Inside was a letter. The letter that cracked the entire case open. 11 a.m. Detectives Green and Reyes placed Tasha's belongings on the stainless steel table. The folded envelope sat between them, its flap sealed with a single silver sticker. Sergeant Green said, We thought we'd seen everything, but this was something else. 11:30 a.m. Green carefully lifted the flap. Reyes clicked on the overhead camera. Every word, every pause would be recorded. Tasha's handwriting was neat, looping at the ends of her letters like she'd practiced it 100 times. Green cleared her throat and began to read aloud. My dearest James, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't bring myself to say it face to face. I love you more than words can say. You've given me hope I never thought possible. There's something I was terrified to tell you. I've kept it hidden because I was afraid of losing you. James, I was born a man. I changed my name, my life, so I could find peace. And I found you. I understand if you can't forgive me, but please know every letter, every visit was real. My love for you was never a lie. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 12:15 p.m. Reyes folded the letter closed. Green's eyes were damp. Neither spoke. The room was silent except for the hum of the ventilation. Lieutenant Reyes said, This changes everything. 12:45 p.m. They reviewed JD's reaction on the interrogation footage. For the first time, he'd spoken coherently, almost calmly. She was going to tell me. I just saw the envelope and knew I couldn't live with that secret. He slammed his fist on the chair's armrest. The echo reverberated off the walls. 1 p.m. An investigator pulled up floor plans of the visiting room. They noticed a blind spot in the cameras, where JD whispered in Tasha's ear. Moments later, he pulled out the makeshift weapon. Had he planned this? Or was it a crime of passion, triggered by that single whispered confession? 1:30 p.m. Detectives concluded the letter was the catalyst, a hidden truth unveiled too late, and JD's world, built on every promise Tasha made, shattered in an instant. September 15, 2018, the day after the murder word spread fast. By sunrise, the entire D block knew what JD had done. Inmates whispered behind bars, passing theories like cigarettes. Everyone had their own version of the story. Some said it was rage, some said betrayal. But one thing was clear. JD didn't just snap, he unraveled. Slowly, quietly, right in front of everyone. Dre, JD's closest cellmate, was brought in for questioning. He looked tired, pale, like he hadn't slept since the killing. Dre said, "Look, he was different those last few weeks, like he knew something was off. I'd catch him rereading her letters, then burning some of them. One night he said to me, 'What if I married someone who ain't who they said they were?' I thought he was being paranoid. But he wasn't." Another inmate, Luis Spider Varela, told guards he heard JD sobbing at night, not crying. Sobbing. Spider stated to guards that man was breaking down piece by piece. "Ain't no one noticed? Dude went from poetry to silence. That's when I knew something was gonna blow." One of the more disturbing accounts came from a prison janitor, Mr. Holland, an old-timer who cleaned the day room near JD's cell. Mr. Holland, in sworn affidavit, found a plastic spork melted at the edge, carved sharp, threw it away. Didn't think nothing of it. Figured it was just some punk prepping for a fight. Turns out JD had been preparing, not for a fight, but for judgment. After the incident, investigators searched JD's locker. They found dozens of letters from Tasha, but in the back, tucked inside an old Bible, was a page torn from a medical printout. Hormone replacement therapy, prescriptions, legal name change documents, under Tasha Renly, formerly Thomas Reynolds. It was unclear how JD got those papers, but it confirmed one thing. He knew the truth, and he'd been sitting on it for at least a week before the murder. This wasn't spontaneous, it was simmering. The trial began 6 months after the murder. State of Ohio versus James Dalton. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, family members. The air was heavy, everyone waiting for the moment the truth would spill out in open court. JD entered in a gray jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front, eyes straight ahead. He never looked at Tasha's family. Never once. The prosecution painted a clear picture. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was premeditated. They revealed the melted plastic spork, the printouts, the burned letters. They even brought in the prison janitor, Mr. Holland, who testified that the weapon had been seen weeks before the attack. But the most gut-wrenching moment came when the prosecutor read Tasha's final letter out loud. "James, I was born a man." There wasn't a sound in the courtroom. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Only JD, staring down at the floor like he was somewhere else entirely. Then came the defense. They didn't deny he killed her, but they argued it was emotional devastation, a betrayal so deep, so personal, that it cracked something inside him. "He married her," the defense attorney said. "He gave her his heart, and she gave him a version of the truth." They pleaded for manslaughter, not murder. JD himself finally took the stand. And when the judge asked if he had anything to say, he looked straight ahead and said only, "I just wish she told me, before I loved her." It took the jury less than 3 hours to decide. James Dalton was found guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. No tears, no outburst. He nodded. Once, and was escorted out through a side door. Forever. The murder of Tasha Reynolds sent shockwaves through Ohio's prison system. Inmates who witnessed the stabbing were placed under psychiatric evaluation. Several said they still hear her scream in their sleep. But the ripples didn't stop at the prison gates. Within weeks, Marion Correctional Institution updated its visitation policies, Sharp object checks were doubled. Tables were bolted down. Plastic utensils banned. The warden issued a statement to the press, brief, cold, and carefully worded. We regret the incident that occurred on September 14th. Procedures have been reviewed to prevent future tragedies. Tasha's family was devastated. Her younger sister, Maya, held a quiet memorial in Lexington. Only a handful attended. Some came out of respect, others out of curiosity. But it wasn't just grief. It was silence. Very few people spoke publicly about the fact that Tasha was transgender. No interviews, no viral hashtags, just a name that quietly disappeared into the system, like it never existed. Inside prison walls, JD became a ghost. He was moved to solitary for his own protection. Word had spread. He'd murdered a woman who, to many inside, was just that. A woman. But to others, she was a liar. And that word, liar, is what people clung to when they couldn't face the complexity of what really happened. Years later, a prison guard anonymously said this about JD. He don't talk no more, don't write, don't read, just sits there, staring at nothing like he's waiting to wake up from something. No one will ever truly know what happened between JD and Tasha in those final seconds. Because the most important part of this case, the whisper, was never recorded. The moment she leaned in, said something only he could hear, and he decided to kill her. Some believe JD had already known for weeks, that the letter was just confirmation of a secret he couldn't handle. Others insist it was spontaneous, triggered by a final, shattering truth spoken in his ear. A few even questioned whether Tasha ever intended to tell him at all. Maybe she brought the letter as a backup. Maybe she thought love would erase the need for full honesty. Then there's the weapon, a melted plastic spork, filed down, hidden for days. That doesn't happen overnight. So was he planning this? Or did he prepare it out of fear? Fear that he'd already lost control of the only person he thought was real? The final theory comes from a psychiatrist who reviewed JD's prison file. He wasn't angry because she was trans. He was angry because she broke the illusion he'd built. In a place where everything is taken from you, he gave her the last thing he had, trust. And when that trust snapped, so did he. Her name was Tasha Reynolds, a daughter, a sister, a wife. And to many, a mystery that died with her. There were no national headlines, no viral petitions, no candlelight vigils streamed online. She was buried in a quiet cemetery outside Lexington. No news crews, no cameras, just her sister Maya, and 4 others who refused to let her be forgotten. James Dalton now lives in silence inside a Supermax facility in southern Ohio. No letters, no visitors. He hasn't spoken since sentencing. But the question still lingers like a bruise beneath the surface. Was this about identity or betrayal? What does love become when the truth arrives too late? In the end, Tasha wasn't a secret. She was a human being. And in a world so obsessed with labels, her story became just another one no one knew how to talk about. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not every case has justice. Not every story has a clean ending. But every life, no matter how complicated, deserves to be remembered. Thank you for watching. And if you're into stories that make you feel something, hit that subscribe button. We post new true crime videos every single day. No fluff, no fake drama. Just the truth.